some scary things have just come out, and I think what we need to realize with these scary things is direct quotes from sources. Now, these direct quotes are what we need to pay attention to. Sometimes when we listen to media and we listen to narratives, and even when we read social media, we may not get all the truth. But when we start getting calls, when we start getting like true people that are on the ground in these locations, I think we start waking up. We need to get ready, because what we have seen that's happened in a lot of places across the world, but right here in America, in Appalachia, is maybe signs that there's more to come, to where you need to learn to protect yourself because no one else will. You need to learn to have community, because that's the ones that you can depend on. Your family, your local people, because it seems like our government's not wanting to do that for you. Not only that, we're going to discuss just some very important things when it comes to agendas. And agendas against you, your freedoms, your independence. Let's talk about these things today, because if you don't get ready for the next coming weeks and months ahead, I'm scared it's going to be too late. Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so very much for being here today. If you are new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that's okay, but let us know what you think about the content of today's video. Also remember, when you give us a thumbs up, you comment, you share your life with us, we share our life with you. It helps us all grow together. And so when people get in the comments and they can learn from what you say, even off our videos. Not only that, remember, when you subscribe and you comment, you are entered into the drawing each and every month. It's something, just a gift from us to say thank you. We humbly thank you for doing that. So we want to give something to you. So you're entered into a giveaway each and every month of hundreds and even thousands of dollars worth of prizes. So make sure you are subscribed. Now let's jump into the content of today. I want to bring up some conversations by politicians, but also people that are on the ground. First, I want to bring up some startling things from what I consider establishment. Lindsey Graham was interviewed and said that he sees the catastrophic damage that, and remember, he's in South Carolina. He sees the catastrophic damage that South Carolina's and North Carolina and Tennessee has had. Now, this is his area. Now, remember, he doesn't live there. He's been in Washington way too long, but pretty much that is people that you would consider near and dear to his state or surrounding states. You know what he was worried about? Was the attack in the Middle East and how he needs to keep funding situations in Ukraine and Israel. Now, again, I told you I'm not for anyone having devastation across the world with Israel and with Ukraine. But that is not our job. Our job is to fight for our people back at home. North Carolina has a lot of things going on, and we're going to talk about some of that today. But when we have our politicians saying that they care more about what's happening in Israel and what's happening in Ukraine, when we have people that are literally going 4 to 5 days without food and water, that are stuck, there's thousands of people missing. And again, our politicians, who is one of the biggest politicians on the right, even though I don't like him, establishment guy, he comes out and he says, we need to worry about funding what's going on overseas. It's more important. Now, can you believe he said that? You know why he says it? Because no one holds his hand to the fire. No one is willing to stand against him and primary him, and Republicans keep electing this guy. And is he truly leading South Carolina in a right way? No. Now let's talk about another politician that just mentioned something, and then we're going to go right back to North Carolina. But John Kerry came out and stated his exact words. I'm going to read his quote to you, because this is the people that are leading us. These are the establishment politicians that are literally leading us, and we're allowing them to have power over us. John Kerry said, if Democrats win, we can change the First Amendment to make sure we're fighting disinformation. What that means is they're going to take your freedom of expression, but also freedom of what we say and the right to say it. Is that really what we want? Now, you've heard that. We've mentioned that several times on this channel. But do you realize if we didn't have people independently speaking, if we didn't have Twitter, if we didn't have people like us that's willing to kind of say the hard parts, and if we get held down even more and ghosted and censored more, and then we have persecution against us. I mean, look, they were able to shut down a former president on social media. Now, there's things that's changed in 4 years, but we saw the ramifications of what that caused. But now we're seeing that they're coming back around and saying this is, I mean, Clinton, Kerry, even down to Kamala Walsh are all saying, well, the First Amendment, in the Constitution, there's things that we can learn from it, but we need to update it. Well, updating it means is taking your rights. These are the people that we're putting in power. Now, I just mentioned to you a left and a right person, both establishment people. What that shows is the system that we have is against us. Now let's bring up the proof of that. I mentioned a few quotes, some bombshells, I think. The Biden-Harris administration has completely turned their backs on the suffering Americans in North Carolina. General Flynn, he was interviewed by Benny Johnson. It says he confirmed that thousands are dead and the death toll is probably going to double. We're probably going to see the upwards of 2,000 at least dead. No one's talking about it, and they're trying to hide the truth, because what they're doing is they're controlling what's going on there on the ground. Now, there is reports that there is, of course, martial law in, and we know curfews and martial law tends to happen in these situations. I don't believe it. I think it's wrong, but at the same time, I understand where people are saying, well, if all of a sudden one of our rescuers are trying to do something at 10 or 11 o'clock at night and they get in a bad spot, or their helicopter gets in a bad spot, then we have to go rescue them. So there's parts of no, do I believe in martial law? No. But I do believe there's times that we should be helping and making sure that we're doing all our efforts. Now the thing is, I don't believe we should have curfews and having martial law, because remember, at this point in time, the time is against these people. If they've been in the water 3 to 4 to 5 days, if they have not had true potable water, true good water and to drink and food, then you're going to see that death toll rise even more. So I understand what they're trying to do is saying we need to make sure that we stick together and we know where everyone is at all times. However, I think they're going about it the wrong way, like most time government does. We cannot put a time frame on this situation, and if you have crews that are willing to work overtime, work 24 hours a day to rescue people, that's what we should be allowed to do. And General Flynn's saying it's not allowing to happen, and that's from sources he has on the ground. Now also, you got to remember, Glenn Beck actually came out and said the same thing. He said, what we've revealed with FEMA is that they have tried to shut down our medical tents in one of the hurricane-stricken areas. Wait until you hear the shocking results of what's actually happening there. And he goes on the ground, and what he says is, the confiscation, yes. The medical confiscation, yes. The fact that they're telling us we can't fly into certain areas, yes. The way they're telling us we can't utilize our own private goods and our own private flights, our own private things to give to people and get people out of harm's way, they're holding it down. So it shows that the government's job should be to make sure that we're all working together. What it seems like they're doing is they're hindering more than they're actually helping. I'll bring up something else that Glenn said, and he brought it up because what Elon stated. Elon stated, said, SpaceX engineers are trying to deliver Starlink terminals and supplies to the devastated areas in North Carolina right now, and FEMA is both failing to help and won't allow others to be helped by us. Now, Elon pushed that, and of course he's got hundreds of millions of people that are looking at what he says, and it did make a difference with old Pete Buttigieg. But the bottom line is it shouldn't have took that. People's lives and communication is key in these situations, and their lives depend on it. What if there's someone hurt up where a helicopter's going in? They need some kind of satellite technology, and Elon has it. Now, this administration has not been a friend to Elon, so they didn't want to do it. But all of a sudden, when the outrage is there, people are bringing it up that Elon's willing to help, and that FEMA is basically blocking him. TSA is blocking him. Department of Homeland Security, DHS is blocking him. I want you to listen to what Glenn Beck just said. I just received some information from the inside that makes this even worse. I will be sharing this later on the week. But he says, I want to double check the fact that Elon is right. It is the State Department and what they did to me in Afghanistan is what they're actually doing in North Carolina. He said they blocked our planes from taking off as we began to rescue 20,000 plus heroes. He said because of what they did, they have now left people in Afghanistan, and they are now working on, and Mercury One and Glenn Beck's organization is working on trying to hide these people and keep them safe. State Department and the government's not doing anything for them to get them here. He said what they're doing in Afghanistan and what they did in Afghanistan is actually what is happening in North Carolina. American citizens. Douglas McGregor came out and said this. He said, South Carolina got $2 million while Lindsey Graham's complaining about not having enough funds to go to overseas. while all the while they had a $75 billion check go to all the other places just in the last few days. But $2 million goes to Americans in South Carolina that's dealing with a tragedy. Not only South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia. This is a conservative country. Now, I believe there's some kind of conspiracy behind it. It's not for me to decide. But what I do see is that you've got major devastation, and the government seems to be blocking every avenue of private people coming in to help. Now, I've seen like people with like Cletus McFarland, a YouTuber, flying in and using his helicopter. I've seen other YouTubers documenting some help by some local folks. That's great. We should be working together. But when you hear people like Glenn Beck and Elon and some of the biggest people that want to help, have the funds to help, get blocked, all because maybe their narrative or their politics, that's not right. That's kind of like what John Kerry said. Well, it's disinformation. I mean, that's why we need to win this election so we can stop all that. You better be careful of what's actually happening with your government. It may be getting too big. And when it gets too big, what are you going to do? I'm going to bring two more stories up, and then we're ending for the day. You know, there was jobs numbers that just came out. Huge, just huge growth. Sad thing is this, a record number of 785,000 new workers have just happened. But guess where it was? It was in the government sector. Government public work. You with your taxpayer dollars, just hired 785,000 more people in September. 785,000 more people just got paid and just now got hired by the government. So really, is the government growing smaller or growing bigger? Is the economy getting better, or is it the fact that government just keeps inflating its own self to make it look like the economy is good? Pushing this total would make the workers a new record high. Our government is bigger than it's ever been in history. All the while, we're the most debt that we've ever been in history. So we're worried about this expansion of establishment state, right and left, mostly left, but definitely some of these establishment right. Look at what's actually happening. We're growing, but growing in the wrong way. Last story, because this affects you more than you can imagine. This is from Zero Hedge. It says, dozens of meat processing plants expected to shut down under these new EPA rules. Now, America's way has been to, most of these businesses have been bought out by all these big conglomerates and these big systemic government tied agencies. Our chickens, our beef, all that's been bought out by overseas players or by people who believe in the narrative of government. Well, you know there's a push against food and meat. Well, under the new guidelines, tons more of meat processing plants across America that's keeping your food on your table will shut down. Now, what does that do? That makes your meat pricing that's already really expensive spike tremendously. So if you're not like me and raising food, like most Americans, they go buy it. Well, if all of a sudden your ground beef went up to $10 to $15 to $20 a pound, what are you going to do? You're probably going to either eat vegetarian, or you're going to get the fake meat, or you're going to get some ultra-processed manufactured meat. You don't believe it's happening? Why do you think all these meat providers are starting to buy into the alternative meat plants? Why? Tyson Foods just did. Also, some of the biggest players in beef have done the same thing. Because if they can weed out the bad players and they can then find a way to cheaper feed you junk food and then all of a sudden still keep a premium on price of meat, then therefore they hold the market. And it's feeding right into what the government says, because the government doesn't want you eating meat and they want to hold it for themselves and for the ones who can't afford it. But for the ones who can't, you just eat all this other garbage. And then all of a sudden your health care ends up going up because you've ate all this trash food that's giving you some bad health, to where now you're either on some kind of medicine for a lifetime. You don't believe that's actually happening? EPA is putting up more regulations to shut down more meat plants. And they said it could make your meat go up by double in 2025. So there's a lot on the line when it comes to Harris Walls. If they win, you could look at, of course, higher pricing, as they say they're not pushing, but what people are not looking at the actual stories of what they're actually doing. All this environmental stuff is actually killing the meat market and food market. It's amazing for thousands of years. We know healthy and we know the world goes great when we have plants that are growing, trees that are growing. Regenerative agriculture animals grazing. It's amazing that the environmentalists and the liberals will literally cut down all the trees that give us life and oxygen, and also take all the prairie lands out, take all the animals out of the prairie land and put them in some kind of barn and keep them on some kind of antibiotics, and at the same time put a wide array of chemical-induced solar panels and windmills all over the skyline and all over the ground. You actually think that's good for the ground? We actually think that's good for the climate? What would be better for the climate is you let it go wild and you let it go natural and you start growing food. And you start seeing lush green pastures with animals that are basically feeding the crop by manure dropping off their back end, at the same time eating it and making the best quality meat for its people to eat in America. We've done it right for so long. Why all of a sudden do we think we should change it because a billionaire or a government says so? Pay attention to what's happening. Harris Malls are letting this happen. FEMA is running amok and basically holding goods and confiscating goods from people. First-hand knowledge. Quit listening to what Harris says or FEMA says or Buttigieg says, and look at the stories. It will blow your mind. Guys, let me know your thoughts on these things. You better get ready, because what this shows more than anything to me is no matter how devastating something can be, no matter what place of the world we're in, even in Afghanistan or in America, if you are looking for the government to take care of you, you are deadly wrong. You are sadly wrong. And they're going to leave you stranded. So you have to take care of yourself and you have to prepare, because no one else is going to do it for you. Yes, there's great people out in the world that are going to be volunteers and help. There's tons of people up there helping. I've actually reached out to a company. If I can go, I'm going. I'd love to help. I'd love to see Americans help. But sadly, it's not enough when they're having to fight our own government to help its own people while they're sending billions across the world. Guys, give me your thoughts. Again, not to be ranty, not to beat a dead horse, because I feel like that's what I've talked about the last few days, but the truth is, we better realize that no one's looking out for us, especially our government. And we're paying taxes, and we're making sure that we have to be here and do all the things right that our government wants us to do. And all the while, they're not doing anything for us, right or left. We need better leadership. Give me your thoughts. God bless.